Hey guys, welcome to another week of Elevate Online. Glad you're here today with us. All right guys, let's get this thing started. If you didn't know, I hope you did know, but if you didn't know, today is a very special day, and that is Father's Day. That is the time where we celebrate fathers. That is the time that we celebrate fathers and all that they do and all that they've given. And so happy Father's Day to all of your dads out there, wherever they are, if they're listening or not. Happy Father's Day. So speaking of fathers, is your dad kind of like the stereotypical dad? I got sidetracked again on TikTok last week, and as Father's Day was coming up, I saw a lot more videos of dads. And so this one came up, and it was about these different stereotypes that dads often have and what they usually say. Let's watch it, because it really just reminded me of my dad.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it. You guys have it so good around here. It's only 1 mile, son. I used to walk 15 miles every day to school, both ways, uphill, barefoot, through any weather. Billy, I didn't have social media to talk to girls. I actually had to go up to them in person. 38.5. See, you're so lucky you have calculators. We didn't even have these. You remember that, Sharon? I used to write you those little notes and call your house phone.
The reason why I'm mentioning these videos is because one of the stereotypical things that we often hear dads say, one of the things that we all kind of, even I remember, and now I am actually kind of morphing into this, is that dads don't like to be wasteful. I mean, no one really kind of does, but it's like I remember when I was a kid and I would open the fridge door for like 0.5 seconds and my dad would go, hey, just get what you want and close the door. Don't want to waste energy, don't want to waste money. Are you going to pay for that? And it just reminded me of how my dad was always adamant about not wasting the energy in the house, you know, closing the back door, leaving the AC at a certain temperature. It's a real thing, guys. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because we are 3-4 months now into this quarantine, into this pandemic, this thing that we have all been this thing that we have all forcibly been thrust upon. Is that the right word? This thing that we have all been handed. And by now, you've probably already had to make some really important choices. Am I going to be wasteful or not? Now, here's what I mean. I don't mean just wasting energy around the house. I don't mean just wasting time. Actually, that is kind of what I mean. The real question is, during this time of quarantine, during this time of being at home a lot more, what are you doing with your time? What are you doing with this opportunity, with this circumstance that you have in front of you? Are you wasting it? Or are you using it? You see, most of our time is spent in cycles. I don't know if you noticed, but even during the school year, some things just get super repetitive. You go to first class, second class, third class, lunch, fourth class, whatever, and you do the same things over and over. You go to lunch, you go to dinner, you go to this sports event, you go to a Friday night game or whatever. You see, when we get in this cycle of life, it's hard for us to sometimes get out of the habits, good or bad, that we are in. It's hard to sometimes look and just stop and pause and to actually make changes that will alter how we live our life. Well, the thing about this quarantine is it's actually presented us an opportunity to pause, to stop everything that we're doing, to stop the normalcy of life, to stop everything that we are used to doing, and now to begin to look around us and begin to observe what we're doing. We get to observe, are there changes that we need to make in our life? And are there choices that maybe we need to be making now in order to live more productively after all of this comes back? Another way of looking at this is that God is now using this time to help grow us and stretch us. And so today's message is the great pause. All right, so we're going to get this lesson started with a passage of scripture found in Matthew chapter 25, but a little tiny bit of context before we get into it. Jesus is talking with a group of people, and he's deciding to share some parables, or what we call stories. And he's sharing what the kingdom of heaven looks like. And remember, the kingdom of heaven is not just a physical place, but rather it's also a spiritual one. Okay, so a little also more context. I'm going to give you a little synopsis of this first half of the scripture. Jesus is again telling a story about a man who has money, and he's going off, and so he's giving it to his servants to do whatever they want with it. And he gives one person 1,000, another 2,000, another 5,000. He leaves, he trusts them to do something with it, he comes back, and he finds out that 2 of them have actually doubled their money, but the one who only had 1,000 didn't do anything. He just kept on to it and gave it back to him. So let's dive in. Then the servant who had given 2,000 coins came in and said, "You gave me 2,000 coins, sir. Look, here are another 2,000 that I have earned. Well done, you good and faithful servant," said his master. "You have been faithful in managing small amounts, so I'll put you in charge of large amounts. Come on in and share my happiness." Then the servant who had received 1,000 came in and said, "Sir, I know you are a hard man. You reap harvest where you did not sow, and you gather crops where you did not scatter seed. I was afraid, so I went off and hid your money in the ground. Look, here's what belongs to you." "You bad and lazy servant," his master said. "You knew, did you, that I reap harvest where I did not sow and gather crops where I did not not scatter seed? Well then, you should have deposited my money in the bank and I would have received it all back with interest when I returned. Now take that money away from him and give it to the one who has 10,000 coins. For to every person who has something, even more will be given, and he will have more than enough, but the person who has nothing, even the little that he has, will be taken away from him. Okay, so this story is about using your time wisely. You see, Jesus tells a story because it's a great example of how we have with our gifts. Jesus gave these men opportunity in the form of money, and the same way now we have the opportunity in the form of time. And the question is are we going to be like the two men who invested in it and actually doubled their profits? Or are we going to be like the man who just held on to it and did nothing? One of the key parts in this story is that Jesus says this one line that's really important. You have been faithful in small amounts, and so now I put you in charge of large amounts. Again, that word faithful is the word trust. And that's important for us to realize is that in this story, the master gave these servants an opportunity. He gave them something to do. And now that 2 out of 3 did something with it, he trusts them more with more things. And the same way with us. If we use our God-given talents and do nothing with them, God's not going to do that much to give us more. That's not a punishment. It's just we're not doing anything to earn more. We're not doing anything to show God I'm ready to move on to the next level. A lot of us have been in the same place for a really long time because we've chosen not to do anything with the God-given talents that he's given us. And hear me out. That's kind of a rant even on myself, because I think we all kind of experience this at some point or another, is we get into these cycles like I was mentioning earlier of just doing the same thing over and over and over again. But sometimes it takes us to pause to look at the God-given talents that he has given us and then to make something happen with those things. So with all that being said, let's go into 4 ways that we can make the best out of this great pause. Okay, so to get point number 1 started, we're going to start off in 1 Timothy chapter 4. Do not neglect the spiritual gifts that is in you, which was given to you when the prophets spoke and the elders laid their hands on you. Practice these things and devote yourself to them in order that your progress may be seen by all. Watch yourself and watch your teaching. Keep on doing these things, because if you do, you will save both yourself and those who hear you. Okay, so Paul is telling Timothy, he's kind of like a mentor to Timothy. He's telling him, hey, you've learned a lot of great things and you have a lot of great gifts. Don't just sit back and do nothing, but rather do something. And this something, point number 1, is to create. So one of the best things that we can be doing right here, right now, in this great pause, this great moment in our society where things have come to a really big screeching halt, is we can now have the time to create. Now, why is that important to this lesson or even to just theology and Christianity? Well, for one, God is a creator. He is a creator and he has created us to be creative beings. It's important that we practice that. It's important that we actually spend the time to be creative. Another way of looking at this is that creativity produces growth. When we choose to do new things, when we choose to try to be innovative and try to do things for not just ourselves, but for others, we are now creating growth. Because here's the way it happens is even if we mess up, even if we don't do what we wanted to do, we still learn from it and we still grow from it. When I was in high school, I was very into music. I loved listening to music. I loved listening to movie scores. My favorite musician, my favorite composer of all times is Hans Zimmer. The dude did Dark Knight. He did Inception, he did Interstellar, he did The Lion King. Guys, come on. I listened to that music and it always inspired me to create my own. Now, during that process, I tried to also sing. If you know anything about me, I can't sing. And so there was a few times where I actually attempted to do both, and I did okay musically, but I didn't do so very well vocally. However, my best friend, Chris, he was extremely poetic and he loved to write poetry. And so we put his poetry with my music and made some really cool stuff. And so during the good portion of our latter high school and even early college years, we actually made music together. But my point is that we need to take time to be creative. We need to take time to just share with what God has given us. If you can sing, sing. If you can play an instrument, play an instrument. If you are good at some kind of sports thing, then practice your sports thing. Whatever it is, become more creative with whatever you're doing. And even if it's just to create stupid, funny videos where you're challenging yourself to do something different, do that, because at the very least, by sharing that to the world, you're making someone smile. You're making someone just have a little bit better day. Spend your time in this moment, in this great pause that we have, to be creative, to practice the gifts that God has given you, to become better at what he's done for you. And here's an even greater way of thinking about this, is the more you practice these things, the more prepared you can be for when God has called you into new, bigger opportunities. All right, point number 2, we're gonna start in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. Let's do it. So be careful how you live. Don't live like ignorant people, but like wise people. Make good use of every opportunity you have, because these are evil days. Don't be fools then, but try to find out what the Lord wants you to do. Point number 2 is become a master of time. Now, I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but here's what I mean. We have an opportunity, again, in this great pause to stop and look at how we manage our time. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, I shared with you on my phone a very real analysis of how I spend my time on my phone. Now, what I do with that information is now completely up to me. Do I choose to look at that information and go, oh wow, I spent this much time on social media, I'm not going to do anything different? Or I can go, I spent this much time on social media, maybe I need to decrease that and now give my priority and my time to other things that can actually grow me and make me more productive. So the question that you should be asking yourself right here, right now, especially now that's in the summer and you have no school and that you're probably still in some kind of quarantine, is what are you doing to grow yourself? We have the means and opportunity right now, like the scripture just said, we have the opportunity to do something different. Let's not waste this opportunity that God has in store for us to listen to Him, to pray and to communicate with Him and ask Him, how can I be growing? What do I need to do to manage my time better? What habits do I need to start differently? What hobbies do I need to pick up? What hobbies do I need to let go of? Who do I need to listen more? Who do I need to talk more? How do I need to grow more? We need to ask God these very important questions. That way we can actually grow during this time and not waste it. If you really want to grow, just do it.
Just do it!
All right, for point number 3, we're going to go to John chapter 13, verse 35. Let's do it. If you have love for one another, then everyone will know that you are my disciples. Short, sweet, simple, to the point. If we want to be known as Christ followers, if we want to be known as His disciples, the best way that we can do that is to love others. And so the point number 3 is love and serve. We need to take this time that we have as a nation and as a community and as even in this church to love and serve one another. That's how we're going to be known as Christians. That's how we're going to actually grow and to do more for not just ourselves, but for the people around us. We need to take time to love people and to serve them in ways that we never thought of before. So the question you might be asking, well, Tim, how can I serve others? How can I love others when I'm just stuck at home? Glad you asked. You can, 1, pray for them. We can spend time to just lift them up. You can pray for health and safety and comfort and for joy and peace in their lives. We can be praying for those things. And even when you know the specifics, pray over that continuously for people. Pray for those that you really care about and pray for those who maybe you haven't thought about praying about before. Another way to serve is to give. That is a very broad statement, but you know, because you know your circumstances and you know your gifts and you know your abilities, but we can give to others, whether that's by donating, whether that's by giving our time, whether that's by just doing something in our community for people. We can give something from ourselves towards others. That's how we love and that's how we serve others, is by giving. God loved us so much that He gave His one and only Son to die for us. Hence, love equals give, or give equals love. However you want to look at it, we need to give. And another way that we need to love and serve others is kind of goes back to point number 1, is we need to be creative about it. Sometimes loving and serving others requires creativity. We need to choose to do things that maybe other people haven't thought of before. We need to do things that are maybe outside the box of how we used to love and serve others. A great example of this is I saw on the news a few weeks ago, this man in Spain, he was a taxi driver. He chose to use his money, to use his gas, to use his time to deliver potentially sick people who had COVID-19 to hospitals for free. He didn't do something super complicated. He didn't do something that was super innovative. He just did something that he was capable of doing. That's the same way with us. We need to look at, okay, what gifts do I have? What talents do I have? And how can I be giving and loving and serving for the people around me? Do what you can with what you have. All right, for point number 4, we're going to start off in 1 John chapter 4. There is no fear in love. Perfect love drives out all fear. So then, love has not been made perfect in anyone who is afraid, because fear has to do with punishment. We love because God first loved us. The scripture is, I think it's amazing and it's beautiful and it's incredible, because the scripture tells us that God loved us even before we could even think about loving Him. That means He loved us when we were messed up, when we've done stupid things. And so my point number 4 is to keep Jesus first. I think this time that we have, this opportunity that God has given us, this circumstance that we have around us can be a refreshing time for us, because now we can actually pause our lives. We can pause what we've been doing. We can pause the cycles that we've been in, and we can choose to go, okay, but have I been keeping Jesus first? Have I been putting him first in my life? Have I been putting him in my top priority? Have I been choosing to listen to him, to communicate with him, to pray, to love, to dive into scripture, to dive into community, to dive in with fellow believers? Have I been choosing to put Jesus first in all of this? And here's the thing is that when we choose to put Jesus first in our lives, in our hearts, loving and serving others becomes so much easier. Being creative becomes so much easier. Mastering our time becomes so much easier. I mean, all these things, these first 3 points I mentioned, every single one of them is made easier when we choose to put Jesus first. And so I want to encourage you all, as we have this moment, have this opportunity, have this circumstance around us, whether it was forced or not, we have an opportunity to learn and to grow and to make something out of it, and to ultimately reevaluate our lives and to put Jesus first. And guys, let me tell you, he's eager for that. He's eager for us to go to him, to look for him, to search for him, to call for him, and to just want a relationship with him. Jesus is ready for that, and he's open, and he's ready for us to come into his arms and come into a relationship with him. So my challenge for you and even for me is, let's not get back into the same rhythms that we've been in before. If we come out of the quarantine the same way that we got in, there hasn't been much growth. I want to encourage you to maybe break some of the cycles that have been holding you back, to maybe start doing some of the things that I mentioned, to start mastering your time, to start serving and loving others, to become creative, to do these new things for Jesus and for our relationship and even for our community. So let's not get back into the same rhythms, the same motions, the same cycles, but rather let's break out into new ways of living with Jesus. Let's break out into new methods, new habits, new life with Jesus. All right, well, that's it. Thank you all so much for joining in today. I love you all. I'm so excited for this week. I'm so excited to see you and to hear from you this week in all of our different things. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Love you guys. Adios.